Her son slapped her in the spice aisle between the cumin and the paprika. Marjorie Allen didn't flinch. She reached for the jar he forgot. By sunset, her lawyer had reopened a case file Darren thought was buried. 78% of the house was hers. The bruise just reminded her why. He told her to get lost. She did, right into the title, the deed, and his blind spot. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The slap didn't echo the way it did in movies. No crisp snap, no dramatic gasp from onlookers. It landed with a dull, almost hollow thud, as if it had been muffled by the years of silence that came before it. Marjorie Allen didn't stumble. Her head turned slightly, her fingers steadied on the cart handle, and she blinked once, deliberately. Behind her, a small tin of cinnamon sticks clattered to the tile, having been brushed off the shelf by Darren's flailing elbow. The sharp scent of cracked pepper and cumin filled the narrow aisle, layered now with the metallic tinge of humiliation. Darren stood over her, chest heaving, fists curled tight. "I told you," he growled. "Stop nagging me about the damn list. You want paprika so bad. Buy it yourself." Marjorie didn't move. The fluorescent lights above hummed. Shoppers nearby froze in place. A young mother gripping a bottle of olive oil. A teenager with a basket of snacks. An older man pushing his cart halfway into the aisle, now motionless. No one intervened. No one spoke. She lifted her chin. Calm. Controlled. "You forgot the paprika," she said softly, as though reading off a shopping list, not speaking through a fresh bruise blooming on her left cheek. That was when he said it. The words that unlatched a door she'd been quietly building behind his back for years. "Just get lost already." He turned on his heel, muttering something under his breath, and shoved the shopping cart forward like it owed him something. It clanged against a display of barbecue sauces at the end of the aisle. Marjorie stayed where she was. The pain hadn't registered yet. Or maybe it had. She just had a deeper pain already. One that settled in long ago, when Darren stopped being her son and started treating her like a burdensome bill no one wanted to pay. She bent down, picked up the cinnamon sticks, and returned them neatly to their place on the shelf. Then, without any rush, she reached for the paprika, red cap, glass jar, just like she always bought. At the end of the aisle, she parked the cart to the side, near a fall-themed display of canned pumpkin, and quietly turned away. She walked toward the automatic doors, hands steady, steps even, the slap already fading beneath a decision far louder. Outside, the sun baked the parking lot in a blistering haze. Charleston summers had a way of clinging to the skin. Thick, salty air, the faint scent of cut grass and warm pavement. She stepped out into it as though crossing a threshold. She didn't look back at the store. Instead, Marjorie reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and opened her messages. The screen lit up with a name she hadn't tapped in months, but she knew the number by heart. Marjorie, ready to move. "Can you meet today?" She stood beneath the awning of the grocery store entrance, watching cars drift by, carts rattle across the lot. Within seconds the reply came, "Will give me 2 hours. Bring everything." That was it. No fuss, no pleasantries. Just like him. Direct, dependable. 30 years ago they'd worked side by side filing quit claims and quiet titles. Now he was the one person who remembered the truth about who really owned the house Darren liked to call his. She didn't smile. There wasn't time for that. There was only resolve now, clear and cold. Darren burst through the store's exit, eyes darting across the lot. He was empty-handed, irritated, looking for her like a man suddenly aware he'd misplaced something valuable, but wasn't sure why it mattered yet. Marjorie didn't wave, didn't speak. She simply turned and walked down the sidewalk, the spice aisle scent still lingering faintly on her sleeve. Her phone buzzed again. The front door creaked open and clicked shut behind Marjorie. No one noticed. No Lena calling out from the living room. No Darren stomping through the kitchen, demanding what took so long. only the low murmur of cable news echoing from the TV and the rhythmic whir of the dishwasher finishing its cycle. Marjorie stood in the entryway for a moment, bagless, cheek faintly flushed, watching the shadow of her son pass across the hallway without once turning her way. She moved like smoke, quiet, steady, undetected. Up the stairs, past the picture wall with family photos carefully arranged to give the illusion of harmony, she turned down the hallway and opened the linen closet. Behind the rarely touched Easter tablecloths and a box of seasonal napkins was what she'd hidden in plain sight for years. A manila folder, thick with paper, its edges softened with time. She pulled it free. In it sat the receipts. The retirement account transfer statement, the wire confirmation, the notarized gift letter. Every penny accounted for. Her hands were calm as she flipped through them, her eyes tracing the dates like reading her own fingerprints. Downstairs, a door slammed. Tires screeched faintly. Darren and Lena were gone. Perfect. By 6:17 p.m. Will Trent's Navy Ford pulled into the driveway, the engine giving a single puff before falling silent. He stepped out slow, dressed like a man who respected courtrooms even on his days off, pressed khakis, blazer over a pale blue shirt, and that same old-school leather briefcase he'd carried when they used to process estates together. Marjorie opened the door before he could knock. "You still have all of this?" Will asked as she spread the folder's contents across the dining table. His brows arched, the lines on his forehead folding deeper than she remembered. "I knew I'd need it," she replied, no pride in her voice. Just preparation. Just precision. They sat side by side at the oak table. The sun dipped low across the window pane, spilling gold onto the document edges. Will read each page slowly, nodding. On the purchase agreement, Darren's name sat alone on the title line, but Marjorie's money covered 78% of the purchase price. "Here's the transfer," Will said, tapping the receipt from Marjorie's retirement disbursement. "And here's the mortgage payment history. No bank would overlook this." He just thought, "If he never said thank you, I'd forget I gave it." Marjorie said, almost to herself. Will flipped to the notarized gift letter, signed, dated, witnessed. This might be the golden nail. Marjorie didn't smile, but she did allow herself one long breath. "I never meant to stay forever. Just long enough for him to stabilize." Then it turned into, "She's fine upstairs. Then she's lucky to live here." Will gave a quiet nod. "You documented more than most attorneys do in practice." They reviewed everything twice. When Will stood, he placed the pages in a new, crisp legal folder. "Clarissa's still at the bank?" Marjorie asked. "She's assistant manager now. Still loyal and discreet." He reached for his phone. "I'll get her on the line." 5 minutes later, Clarissa was on speaker, voice firm as ever. "Darren's HELOC is in review again," she said. "Payment bounced last week. The underwriter's nervous." Marjorie's eyes sharpened. "They'll deny him. If there's a competing claim to ownership." Clarissa didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." Will looked over at Marjorie, one brow raised. "We can file equitable ownership today, but you'll need to act fast." She didn't blink. "I've been moving fast since he told me to get lost." The car door slammed twice, once for Lena's voice, and once for Darren's ego. Talia's laughter floated from the back seat like the echo of someone still trying to believe her family was normal. Marjorie stood behind the sheer curtain in the upstairs hallway, watching them. She didn't wave. She didn't move. Just watched as the SUV reversed down the driveway, surfboards strapped to the roof, beach towels crammed into the rear window like a careless afterthought. 3 days in Hilton Head. Their version of mental reset, Lena had said, not even pretending to invite her. The front door hadn't even shut before Marjorie was on the landline. "Clarissa Green, Carolina First," came the familiar voice on the other end. "It's Marjorie Allen. I need you to pull a transaction from 13 years ago. Transfer from an IRA to a residential title escrow." There was a pause, then a sharp inhale. "Oh," Clarissa said. "That one." Marjorie didn't waste time explaining. "I need every page. Date, timestamp, signer ID, escrow receipt." Can you have it emailed and hard copied by tonight? I'll make sure of it, Clarissa replied without hesitation. Still want it discreet, always. She hung up and turned toward the hallway. The silence in the house felt different now, not heavy, strategic. Within 20 minutes she'd moved her belongings into the guest room with the lockable door. Not much, her personal files, 2 framed photographs, and a jewelry box that wasn't worth much, but held the last birthday card her husband had ever written her. She didn't need the whole house, just the part she could control. In the far bedroom, Lena's curling iron still sat plugged in. The air held the faint scent of lavender dry shampoo and coconut sunscreen. A glass of half-melted iced tea dripped condensation onto Darren's nightstand. They hadn't even cleaned before leaving. Why would they? Marge sat at the dining table, just before 11 a.m., the same spot where Will had reviewed the documents the night before. With her laptop open and forms printed, she methodically completed the petition for equitable interest. She double-checked each section, typed cleanly, signed with a hand that didn't shake. By noon she was inside the Charleston County Courthouse, papers neatly clipped in a matte folder. The clerk at the civil counter wore pink nails and didn't look up much, but her hands paused halfway through the intake. "Ma'am," she said, thumbing through the file, "this is tight. Like airtight." "I had time," Marjorie replied. The stamp hit the paper. Notarized, filed, docketed. Outside the courthouse, the heat rose in waves off the stone steps. Marjorie shielded her eyes and stepped into the light, her heels ticking quietly on the pavement, like the sound of a clock getting ready to strike. Back home, she brewed a cup of black tea and checked her phone. A fresh photo from Lena lit up her screen. Sun-kissed shoulders, a mimosa in hand, the caption, "Earned every inch of this." Marge tilted her head. No shame, no thought. She forwarded the image to her case folder and filed the lien request. She wasn't loud about it. She didn't post, didn't text, didn't even breathe differently. She simply moved. At 4:23 p.m., her phone buzzed with a familiar "Will," she answered. Calm as rain. "Darren listed the house last week," he said. Voice brisk. "Found the MLS entry buried. The buyer backed out this morning." Marge's stomach didn't drop. Her lips only tightened slightly. "He what?" she asked. "He tried to sell it under his name alone. And the buyer? Guess who the backup buyer was?" The smell of lemon-scented toner clung to the air in Will's office. Not unpleasant but sharp, antiseptic. Marjorie sat across from him, her hands folded calmly on her lap. A storm of legal filings spread across the desk like a quiet war plan. Her name was on every page now. Not Darren's, hers. "The petition's in," Will said, clicking the final box on his desktop. "It's formally lodged with the court. If they don't contest in 10 business days, we escalate." Marjorie gave a single nod. "Precise. Good, that's more warning than I ever got." She pushed a thin binder toward him. Inside was a letter of intent, her offer to purchase Darren's interest in the house, outright, from her irrevocable living trust. Fully funded, irrefutable. Will raised his eyebrows as he skimmed it. Clean language. Stronger than anything he could draft. "I used to draft these for a living, remember?" she said, dryly. "And now you're the client who makes attorneys nervous." Outside, the late afternoon sun glinted through slatted blinds. The office felt like a command post. Quiet, padded, high stakes. Will picked up his phone, dialed a number, and waited. "Clarissa," he said, as soon as she answered. "We're ready to move on the quiet title." "Understood," she said. Her voice came through crisp, focused. "I'll log the motion tonight." And I pulled Darren's deed application from the 2010 file. His wording was sloppy. "Your claim's stronger." Marjorie's lips barely curled at the edge. "Of course it is." They hung up. 2 hours later, back at the house, Marjorie sat on the guest room bed, laptop balanced on her knees. The hallway was still, dim, faint sounds of traffic drifting in through the open window. She navigated to her legal portal and uploaded the title motion, the trust documents, and her updated will. With a few keystrokes, she assigned power of attorney to Talia. It wasn't an announcement. It was an insurance policy, for both of them. Her phone buzzed. Lena. Hey, could you feed the cat? We forgot the extra cans upstairs. Marjorie stared at the message for a long, quiet moment. Then, with no punctuation, she typed back, Marge, you'll need to ask the new homeowner soon. She hit send. Nothing followed. Downstairs, she poured herself a glass of iced tea and sat in the kitchen where Darren had once told her she was lucky to be taken in. The same kitchen where she'd cooked for him at 16, again at 30, and again last month while he pretended her checkbook didn't prop up his life. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound now. She let it settle. The next morning, Will forwarded a message. The original buyer on Darren's failed listing had officially walked too many red flags. Will had planted just enough questions: inheritance disputes, financial irregularities, pending liens, to scare them off without a word of accusation. Marge's name was now listed as a financial stakeholder on the county assessor's record. That was the first domino. By noon, the lien Clarissa filed was posted on public record, quietly, legally, completely. Marge updated her living will. She removed Darren, removed Lena, assigned Talia sole executor, added language that barred future appeals. It was meticulous. Every clause a surgical cut, severing him from what he once assumed would be handed to him with a bow. The house creaked that evening, not with age, but with change, like it finally knew it had a new keeper. Her phone buzzed again. Talia. Dad's talking about refinancing again. You'll want me to record? The voice was unmistakably his. Smug, slow, and soaked in beer. She's almost gone anyway. Darren said. Old woman can't live forever. House'll be mine, and no one can say otherwise. Talia had pressed record without hesitation, pretending to scroll through her phone at the kitchen counter, while he ranted from the living room. The audio was crisp, every arrogant syllable crystal clear. No slurring, no deniability. When she sent the file to Marge that night, she didn't add a caption. She didn't have to. Marge sat in bed, lamp casting a soft yellow glow across her queen, and hit play. Then again, then one more time. Each repetition deepened the silence around her, a silence thick with validation, not relief, not vengeance, but something closer to clarity. There it was, not just neglect, not just cruelty, but intent. Entitlement sharpened into expectation. Darren hadn't just been waiting for her to leave the house, he was waiting for her to die. She forwarded the recording to Will with no subject line. He called within minutes. This changes everything, he said. Then let's change it, she replied. By 9 a.m. the next morning, they were in motion. Will submitted an addendum to her petition, the audio file labeled verbal admission of intent to deceive and harm. He included a brief notation, supplemental evidence of coercive elder financial abuse. The words cut like glass. That same afternoon, Marge filed for an injunction at the courthouse to freeze all property-related transactions. The motion was dry on paper but heavy in reality. Darren could not refinance, transfer, sell, or alter ownership of the home in any capacity until further notice. Her name wasn't just on the filing, it was the reason it existed. Outside, the Charleston heat clung to her skin like damp gauze. Inside, she walked out of the county building with the calmness of someone who had been dismissed for years and had finally slammed the door behind her. Back at home, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. Talia had texted earlier from the dorms. He's trying to figure out why the mortgage site is locked. Marge didn't reply. She didn't need to anymore. That night, while sipping tea in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Darren once threw a chair over an overdue electric bill, Marge saw Lena's social media post through a forwarded message from a neighbor. A filtered beach photo. Sunglasses on, wine glass raised, captioned elders should be grateful, not greedy. Marge let out a low breath, not quite a sigh. She didn't rage, she didn't call. Instead, she took a screenshot, opened the affidavit file, and added it as Exhibit C, documented pattern of passive psychological harm from immediate family. Evidence came in many forms. Sometimes it was a bank transfer, sometimes a bruised cheek, and sometimes it was a hashtag. Will called again. He didn't ask how she was. The county clerk just emailed me, he said, his voice unusually tight. What did they say? They're expediting your case. Hearing scheduled for Tuesday morning. Marjorie didn't speak right away. Then good. The tires crackled against the gravel just before sunset. From her seat by the window, Marjorie didn't move. She watched Darren kill the engine, slam the driver's side door harder than needed. Lena emerged next, sunglasses still on, trailing behind with a small wheeled suitcase. Talia stepped out of the back, slower, a little more distant than when they'd left 3 days ago. No one looked up at the house. No one expected anything inside it to change. They didn't knock, didn't call out. The front door swung open like it always had, like it was owed. Marge listened from the kitchen as luggage rolled across hardwood. Flip-flops flopped against tile, and plastic bags crinkled under the weight of leftover beach snacks. She heard the fridge open, the clink of a wine bottle neck tapping the shelf, Darren's grunt, Lena's bored sigh. She sat at the small table in the breakfast nook, the one no one used anymore. A single plate in front of her, cold chicken salad, crackers, unsweetened iced tea. She took slow, careful bites while their voices rose and dropped around her like she wasn't there at all. In the other room, someone turned on the TV. Laughter from a sitcom filled the space. She ate in silence, spoon scraping gently against porcelain. From the kitchen pass-through, she could see them. Darren standing with a beer in one hand, gesturing wildly about traffic on the return drive. Lena leaning against the counter, face lit by her phone. Talia stood a few steps back, watching both of them, saying nothing. I swear I'm calling that HOA board, Darren muttered. That neighbor's still parking like he owns half the damn block. Oh, Lena laughed dryly. We'll install a stair lift next week. Once Marge stops walking, we'll put her in the pantry. Easier access. Marge didn't react. She wiped her mouth with a cloth napkin, folded it once and stood. She walked into the dining room, slow, deliberate steps, and slid a file folder onto the table between Darren and Lena without a word. Lena raised an eyebrow, but didn't touch it. Darren didn't even glance down. What's this? Something to help you plan better, Marge said evenly. He opened the folder. 3 pages. A court date, highlighted. An official injunction, stamped, and a purchase offer signed by Marjorie Allen, buyer. The number was exact. Enough to hurt. Enough to prove she could afford what he never really owned. He looked up, face flushing. You're out of your mind, she said nothing. Trying to humiliate me, in my own house? You mean the one I paid for? She asked. Voice low, calm as steel. This isn't humiliation, Darren. It's correction. Lena leaned in to see. Her lips parted, confusion mixing with dread. You filed an injunction? She asked. What, like a restraining thing? Not yet, Marge said. Gaze steady. But it's one step away. Darren's fists clenched. You think a judge is going to hand this house to some old woman who's got one foot in the grave? That judge, Marge said, is someone whose mother was scammed out of her home. You think you're the first son to forget who raised him. The silence hit hard. Talia stood frozen in the archway behind them, watching it all unfold. Darren slammed the folder shut. The force echoed off the table. You keep pushing, he snapped, voice cutting. See what happens. His voice was jagged and raw, too loud for the room, too venomous for any son to direct at his mother. You're gonna regret this, Marge. You hear me? You think you're clever? You're just bitter and bored. And Doruz. The audio clipped there, but not before his voice cracked with something deeper than anger. Fear. The kind of fear that only rises when power begins to slip. Upstairs, Marge set her phone down on the bedside table and let an out of recording upload silently to the cloud. Automatic backup. Time-stamped, categorized under threats, May 5th. She hadn't said a word after Darren's eruption at dinner, but she'd heard every syllable, and now so would the court. She sat at the edge of the bed, fingers wrapped around a glass of water, and let the silence settle again. It no longer felt heavy. It felt earned. By noon the next day, Will had filed a supplemental motion, a request for a protective clause to be added to the injunction. In the attached file, 2 audio clips, the recording of Darren's threat, and Talia's captured line from the hallway mic, already have proof that Marge wasn't instigating, she was responding. She never raised her voice once, Will noted in the filing, but she's been heard. That's what matters now. Talia didn't wait to be asked. She emailed a character reference letter to Will's office the same evening. 2 typed pages, quiet, powerful. She's the most capable woman I know. She paid for that house with money she earned, not with manipulation. My father wouldn't even be in it if it weren't for her sacrifice. She taught me how to spot abuse without ever using the word. And now, I see it everywhere in him. Talia Allen, 18, college freshman, granddaughter. Will sent a copy directly to the judge's clerk with a formal note of submission. Another nail, carefully driven. Back at the bungalow, the tension in the walls was starting to leak. Lena, who once snapped at Marge for using the good frying pan, had gone noticeably quiet. No snide remarks, no half-laughed insults passed off as humor. She'd seen the folder, seen the stamped injunction, and heard the venom in Darren's voice. And she could smell public fallout brewing like a storm in a closed room. Marjorie noticed. She also noticed the way Lena had started locking her bedroom door again at night. On Thursday, Marge drove herself to the Verizon store and bought a brand new phone. Sleek, fast, encrypted. No more shared accounts. No more accidental family plan vulnerabilities. She set it up with her fingerprint, tied it to a new cloud login, and backed up every document, every audio file, every notarized sheet from Will's folder. The digital trail was bulletproof now. When she returned home, a neighbor was watering his rose bushes across the street. Mr. Denton, former fire chief, raised a hand. "Everything all right over there?" he asked. "Heard some shouting last night. Thought maybe something serious." Marge didn't lie, but she didn't open the door too wide either. "Just a few things finally getting handled," she said. He nodded. "Well, you let us know if you ever need anything. Lots of folks here who think highly of you." That was new. People had always liked her, yes, but thinking highly, that came from somewhere different. It came from watching her stand up. Inside, Darren paced the kitchen. The man who once bragged about refinancing his way into early retirement was now silent at the counter, opening the same spreadsheet 3 times in 5 minutes, face pale. The next day, Marge received an email from Clarissa at the bank. No greeting, no fluff. Subject: Allen mortgage body. Darren's account is officially marked delinquent. 41 days past due. Statement mailed. Lien visible in system. The courtroom was cold, not just cold, clinical, deliberate. The air conditioning pulsed through the vents overhead, like it was designed to punish anyone already under pressure. Marge felt nothing. She sat straight-backed at the petitioner's table, hands folded over a leather notepad. Beside her, Will arranged the files with his usual quiet precision. Talia sat just behind them, her heels not quite touching the floor, jaw clenched, a small envelope gripped in both hands. The letter she'd written, sealed and ready. At 8:57 a.m., the bailiff called the room to order. Judge Renner entered, thin, weathered, stern, his black robe pressing against the leather chair like it had weight. His eyes scanned the room quickly, and when they paused on Marjorie, something shifted in his posture. A flicker of recognition and respect. The courtroom doors opened again with a dull thud. Darren stumbled in, 10 minutes late, tie crooked, sweat blooming through the armpits of his shirt. He looked around as if he expected applause for showing up. "No, Lena," Will whispered. Marge shook her head once. "Cowards know when to stay home." Darren took the respondent's seat with a grunt, tossing a manila folder down like it meant something. When the judge asked him to confirm his presence, he mumbled, "Yeah," without making eye contact. "Let's proceed," Judge Renner said. Will stood. His voice was measured, calm, a practiced tone with just enough weight to land every word. He handed the clerk the folder marked Allen versus Allen, equitable ownership motion. "Your Honor," he began, "we're here not to reclaim what was lost, but to correct what was stolen. My client, Miss Marjorie Allen, provided 78% of the purchase cost of the property in question, documented via wire transfer from her verified retirement account. She was never added to the deed, despite that investment. He placed the receipts on the evidence tray, then the notarized gift letter, then the printouts of the home equity lien Darren had drawn, without permission, without transparency. Judge Renner read each item slowly, not rushed, deliberate. Will continued. We've also included a character affidavit, behavioral evidence in the form of recorded threats, and a statement from Miss Allen's granddaughter, who has first-hand experience of the emotional manipulation that defined this living situation. He paused, then added, softer. She gave more than her name. She gave stability, silence, even shelter, until it became clear that what was owed wasn't kindness, but control. Judge Renner looked up. Miss Allen, he said. Marge stood. Her knees didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. I gave him a home, she said plainly. He gave me a bruise. Silence fell over the room like a curtain. The judge leaned back, folding his hands. Mr. Allen, do you have a response? Darren stood, fists clenched, face redder by the second. She's lying. She wanted to live there. She offered the money. I didn't force her. She's just mad I didn't coddle her like some fragile. She recorded your threats. Judge Renner interrupted flatly. Twice. We've reviewed them. Darren's mouth opened. Nothing came out. And your financial statements show failure to meet mortgage payments while simultaneously attempting to sell the home without disclosing her contributions, Renner added. Would you like to explain how that reflects good faith ownership? Darren sank back into his chair, mumbling something about misunderstandings. Will stayed quiet. Marge didn't look at her son. She watched the judge. 10 minutes later, the ruling was read aloud, clear and final, effective immediately. Marjorie Allen is granted legal co-ownership of the property located at 314 Savannah Street. Additionally, the court recognizes her financial contributions as substantive, back credit to be applied retroactively from the date of purchase. Talia exhaled audibly. Marge didn't move. Darren's pen hovered above the line like it was rigged to explode. The mediation room was colder than the courtroom, a smaller space with no audience, just dry walls, a pot of stale coffee, and the faint buzz of a flickering overhead light. Outside, Charleston pulsed with summer heat, but inside, Darren's forehead glistened with sweat that had nothing to do with the weather. Judge Renner had left them with one option: resolve the matter privately or return to open court, where the next hearing would not be as merciful. The settlement laid out two choices for Darren. Option A, buy Marjorie out of her co-ownership, including back credit and adjusted equity. Option B, accept her offer to purchase his remaining interest, effective immediately, paid in full. He'd scoffed the moment Will slid the documents across the table. You think I'm gonna just hand it over? Darren muttered, eyeing the terms like they were poison. You're not handing anything over, Marjorie replied, voice even. You're cashing out of something you never earned. Darren laughed, dry, angry, desperate. You think I can't refinance? I got friends at the bank. Will calmly tapped his index finger against the statement in front of him. Darren's latest mortgage delinquency notice. You're already 61 days past due. They're not giving you a soda, let alone a loan. Darren opened his mouth, then closed it again. The room settled into an uneasy quiet. Marjorie pulled out a certified check from her handbag and placed it gently on the table. Her name was on it, and the buyer's line, and the full amount, including every cent she'd originally put into the house, plus interest Darren couldn't calculate if he tried. He stared at it. You had this ready? He asked. I had this ready before you slapped me over Paprika, she said flatly. Will didn't flinch. Talia, seated behind her grandmother, lowered her eyes, not from shame, but from the weight of a truth she already understood. You think owning the deed makes you better than me? Darren muttered, voice small now. No, Marjorie said. It makes me free of you. She passed the pen across the table, and waited. He picked it up, held it awkwardly, like the act of signing would disintegrate him, Then, with a dramatic, bitter scribble, he signed. Will countersigned immediately, flipping through the pages like a man closing a well-won case. Initial here, and that's it. Marge signed last. Her hand didn't shake. Her pen didn't stutter. This time, when she wrote her name, it wasn't an afterthought. It was a declaration. Judge Renner stepped back into the room 10 minutes later, reviewed the signatures, and added his own in 2 swift motions. He looked at Marge. You're now the sole legal owner of 314 Savannah Street. No appeals remain pending. She nodded once. Thank you, Your Honor. He turned to Darren. You're officially removed from the deed and mortgage record. I'd suggest you find another living arrangement. And fast. Darren said nothing. His face, drained of its usual bluster, was pale and unreadable. He looked down at the table like he expected it to offer him some kind of consolation. It didn't. As the room emptied, he stormed past Marjorie without a word. He didn't look back. The hallway swallowed him whole. Outside the building, sunlight spilled across the marble steps. Marge paused there, the final documents in hand, the wind catching a loose wisp of her hair. Talia stood beside her. No hesitation. I'm not going with him, she said. I already packed my things. Marge didn't respond right away. She just handed the deed over to Will for safekeeping, then looked at her granddaughter with calm eyes. Then let's go home, she said. Ours now. As they reached the car, Talia glanced at her phone and frowned. He just texted me, she said. He wants to come back. Said he left something. Marge didn't even blink. Tell him it's already been claimed, she said. And it's not welcome anymore. The door handle rattled for a full 10 seconds before Darren banged his fist against it. 3 hard knocks. Then silence. Then another, louder, more frustrated. The front porch was still dressed in its usual order. The hanging ferns swayed gently in the July breeze. The ceramic frog statue Lena insisted on buying still sat crooked by the welcome mat, and the mailbox glinted in the sun. But the lock deadbolt, smart keypad, reinforced, was new. He twisted the handle again, confused, then yanked once more. Locked. Inside, the air conditioning hummed softly. Marjorie sat at the dining table, sipping her second cup of coffee, unmoved. She didn't look toward the door. She didn't flinch at the pounding. She'd expected it. On the other side of the door, Darren's voice cracked through the wood grain. What the hell, Mom? Why's the lock changed? I need my stuff. Talia walked in from the back hallway, holding a padded envelope with the old house key inside. Want me to toss this? She asked, holding it like a used tissue. Marjorie took it, stood slowly, and walked to the door. She didn't open it, just slipped the envelope through the mail slot. Inside was a note, folded once and tucked neatly beneath the key. You told me to get lost. I did. In your paperwork. Darren's voice rose. What is this? This is my house. Marjorie's reply came through the closed door, steady as weathered stone. It was never yours. It just had your name on it. Briefly, no shouting, no argument, just clarity. Later that afternoon, Lena texted. The message arrived, wrapped in politeness, like it might trick Marjorie into forgetting a decade's worth of undermining. Lena, maybe there's room for compromise. Darren's just stressed. We could talk. Just the two of us. Marjorie didn't reply. She printed the message, folded it, and filed it into a folder labeled Residual Manipulations. Then she called Clarissa. Let's proceed with the restraining documentation, she said. I want it logged before the week ends. Clarissa, ever efficient, replied. I already drafted it, just needed your confirmation. The next morning, Marjorie stood in the driveway with a cashier's check in hand. One final payment. The last thread tying Darren's financial history to the bungalow was officially cut. She handed the check to the bank courier outside her home. Clarissa's stamped approval came via email minutes later. Subject, mortgage, paid in full body. You're clear. Clean title, debt-free. Final deed copy en route. Marjorie printed it and slid it into a fresh folder. That afternoon, while the sun shifted shadows across the porch railing, Talia brought out a new adhesive nameplate she'd ordered overnight. They stood side by the curb as she peeled off the old rusted mailbox letters. Letter, letter, by letter. She stuck down the new ones. Owner. A passing neighbor honked, slowing as he waved. Looks good on you, he called out. Marge smiled, her first real smile in weeks. It does, doesn't it? Inside, the house felt different. Not lighter, exactly, but cleaner. The silence no longer whispered caution. It welcomed. Later that evening, as Marjorie reorganized the legal files in the hallway cabinet, her phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown caller. Charleston area code. She answered. Mrs. Allen, this is Donna over at Palmetto Properties. We had a listing come across with your name as deed holder for 314 Savannah. We just received a full price offer. Buyer is pre-approved, ready to close in 30. Marge froze. She wasn't expecting it this soon. She hadn't even listed officially. Will must have moved the backup file through internal channels. Quietly, efficiently, Talia walked in just then, barefoot, holding a mug of lemon tea. Who was it? Marjorie didn't look up yet, just stared at the screen. The house didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a wound that had finally scabbed. Marge stood at the threshold of what used to be Darren and Lena's bedroom, now scrubbed clean and empty. No sheets, no smell of his cologne, no furniture, just 4 blank walls and the faint creak of floorboards beneath her heels. She inhaled deeply. It no longer smelled like someone else's life. It smelled like decision. In the kitchen, Talia leaned against the counter, sipping from a chipped mug. She watched her grandmother drift through the living room in silence, eyes skimming the baseboards, the mantel, the spot where the couch used to be. You don't have to stay here, Talia said softly. Not out of pride, not even out of principle. Marge didn't answer right away. Her hand trailed across the wood-paneled wall, pausing where a nail had once held a framed wedding photo. I'm not staying out of spite, she said finally. I'm just not sure yet what leaving would mean. It could mean peace, Talia offered. Or a reset. Something that doesn't echo when you walk into the room. The words landed hard and gently. By evening, Marge had called Will. Draw up the listing, she said. But do it right. He met her the next morning with a typed one-pager titled Preliminary Seller's Terms, M. Allen. He slid it across the table. Single ownership, no limits, no contingencies. Title claim transferable immediateless. Seller to approve all viewing requests. Personally, your name's the only one on it now, Will said, not a comma out of place. Marge read every line, then nodded. Good. Before the listing was sent to the MLS, she took one final walkthrough. In the hallway closet, she retrieved an old photo, faded, corners curled. The 4 of them, Darren, Lena, Talia as a toddler and herself, smiling in the background like a ghost. She placed it into a plain manila envelope, sealed it, and tucked it behind the breaker box. On the front, she stuck a yellow post-it note in her looping cursive. Some homes are better without voices. That afternoon, the listing went live. Within 48 hours, the offer came in full price, clean financing, no inspections requested. The buyer was a young couple, moving up from Savannah. No baggage, no history, just a fresh start. Talia whooped and danced barefoot across the living room, twirling Marge's hand in her own. I told you, she laughed. Fresh. But Marge only smiled faintly. She was still listening to the quiet, feeling the weight settle, watching the last of the echoes fade. That night, as they packed up the pantry, Talia's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She picked it up, squinted at the voicemail icon, and tapped play. Her body tensed almost immediately. It's Dad, she said, her voice low. He left this 5 minutes ago. She put it on speaker. Darren's voice filtered through, softer than they'd ever heard it. Talia, look, I messed up. I know that. I didn't expect her to actually go through with it. I didn't think she'd win. But this? Selling the house? That's petty. That's revenge. Not family. You could have stopped her. I hope you're happy. The message ended. Static hummed a second longer, like the line didn't know how to let go. The moving truck rumbled into the driveway at 7:03 a.m., right on time. Marge stood at the edge of the porch, with her cardigan drawn tight, hands clasped in front of her like she was waiting for more than just a truck, like she was watching the closing credits of a life she'd already walked out of. Two young men hopped down from the cab. One wore a baseball cap turned backwards. The other had AirPods in and smelled faintly of spearmint gum and cedar. Both greeted her politely, called her ma'am, and waited for instructions with open patience. "I've marked everything I'm keeping," she said, motioning to the green stickers on the furniture. "Everything else stays. I don't need reminders." They nodded. No questions, no backtalk, just efficiency and respect. Inside, the walls echoed with each thud of a footstep, each piece of furniture lifted, wrapped, and wheeled outside. No one shouted. No one cursed. No one told her to hurry up. For the first time in years, every movement around her happened without the undercurrent of tension. In the corner of the kitchen, a single cardboard box sat open, tea tins, one coffee mug, and the ceramic spoon rest shaped like a bluebird. Marge tucked in a small framed photo of her late husband, sealed the box, and placed it on the counter herself. At 9:20, Will arrived with a folder in one hand and a tablet in the other. "Your wire just cleared," he said. "The buyer's funds hit your account 2 hours ago. It's final." Marge didn't need to see the number. She trusted the weight in his voice. She signed the last form with a flourish. Not rushed, not uncertain, just done. They stood together at the edge of the now empty living room. "I think the house held its breath for a long time," Will said quietly. "And now it gets to exhale," she replied. By noon, the last box was loaded. The truck door slammed shut, and Marge's car pulled away from the curb with Talia following behind in hers. 20 minutes later, they arrived at the new place, a modest single-story home on a tree-lined street with an American flag gently waving from the neighbor's porch and a white swing hanging from a nearby oak. The air smelled like fresh paint and cut grass. The front steps creaked slightly, as if greeting her with curiosity, not judgment. Inside, everything was sunlit and simple. Fresh floors, new locks, no ghosts. While the movers carried boxes in, Clarissa arrived in a navy skirt and heels, her car still running out front. She handed over a small envelope with the quartz gold-sealed release inside. "You're clear," she said, smiling. "No liens, no contest. Fully yours." Marge held the document for a moment before tucking it into the drawer by the front door. "Thank you for staying in the fight," she said. "You led the fight," Clarissa replied. "We just followed your pace." Outside, Talia stood by the new black mailbox, crouched down with a paintbrush in hand. The metal was still cool under her fingers as she painted in deliberate strokes. "Let her be." The lettering read in pale ivory script. Marge watched from the porch, hand wrapped around a cup of mint tea. The rocking chair creaked softly beneath her as she settled into it. Wind rustled the trees. Somewhere nearby, a lawnmower buzzed faintly. Birds flitted between branches, unbothered. A neighbor across the street waved. Another tipped his hat as he passed by on his morning walk. This time there were no sideways glances, no pity, just quiet acknowledgement. Marge returned the wave. Her phone buzzed once. A text: "Darren, you ruined me. You really think this makes you the winner?" She read it once, then tapped delete. The screen returned to calm, like a pond gone still after a single stone drop. The pen didn't shake. Marge sat at the writing desk in her new sunlit den, a ceramic teacup resting beside a pad of thick cream stationery. The window was open just enough to let in the scent of gardenia from the neighbor's hedges, but not enough to invite the humidity. She could hear wind chimes in the distance, gentle, deliberate, like the world was finally speaking her language again. The letter had no greeting, no "Dear Darren," no warmth. She simply began with what he never bothered to ask: "This is what you never counted." The pen moved slowly, every loop and stroke deliberate, no anger in her hand, just memory. "Wait. You never paid for the moving truck the first time you left college." "That was me," You didn't cover your wedding deposit. That was my IRA withdrawal. The groceries, the utilities, the extra insulation for the attic, me again. Line by line, she logged each invisible sacrifice, not just the checks, not just the co-signed loans, but the smaller things he'd treated as expected. The winter coats I left in your closet every year you forgot to shop. The phone upgrades I paid for when you couldn't miss a payment. The therapy bills for Talia, when your temper became her weather system. The list grew longer. The page filled. And then the final paragraph. You said I should get lost. So I did. In every receipt, in every clause, in every boundary you never thought I'd build. You thought silence was weakness. But silence let me hear everything you said when you thought I wasn't listening. Now you'll pay too. In silence. She signed it simply. M. Allen. She folded the letter in thirds, placed it in an unsealed envelope, and slid it into the drawer beneath her desk. She would never send it. That was the point. Some things didn't need to be read to be true. Later that afternoon, Will arrived with a folder of final documents in hand. He wore that expression he saved for big moments, half proud, half reverent. It's ready, he said, placing the file on the table. Trust is finalized. Talia is sole beneficiary. Immediate access on incapacity. Full rights on death. You've got it locked tighter than Fort Knox. Marge reviewed the documents line by line. Each clause was clear. Each instruction unbendable. What about Darren? She asked without looking up. Nothing. Will tapped the signature line. No contest clause. If he tries, he gets even less than nothing. And Lena? Excluded. Explicitly. Marge nodded. Good. I want it airtight. I don't want them circling Talia when I'm gone. They won't be able to, Will said. You've made sure of it. She reached for the pen. This time it wasn't just her name she signed. It was a boundary, a legacy, a verdict. Across the room, Talia stood holding a small file of family photos, old ones before things got ugly. She watched her grandmother sign the trust with eyes that shimmered. When Will collected the documents and gave his final nod, Marge looked to her. It's all yours, sweetheart. When the time comes, there won't be questions. Talia set the photos down and walked over, wrapping her arms around her grandmother's shoulders with quiet force. He hit the wrong person, didn't he? She whispered. Marge didn't smile, but something lighter passed across her face, a soft exhale of truth. No, she said. He underestimated the right one. The room was still for a moment. Then Marge stood, walked to the built-in cabinet by the door, and opened the bottom drawer. Inside sat a single clean property deed, notarized, undisputed, free and clear. She picked it up, unfolded the signature page, and signed again. No trembling, no hesitation. Not in pain, but in permanence. The scent of lemon and butter filled the kitchen before sunrise. Marge cracked the eggs one by one into a chipped blue bowl, just like her mother had. She sifted powdered sugar through her fingers. Not because the recipe required it, it didn't, but because it made her feel present, steady, alive in the smallest ways. The countertops in her new home gleamed beneath the morning light. The kitchen was smaller, cozier, but quieter. The kind of quiet that didn't demand apology. No footsteps above. No shouting through walls, just the rhythmic scrape of a wooden spoon against ceramic and the warm hum of the oven preheating to 350. The lemon bars were always for her birthday, her mother's tradition, tart enough to bite back, sweet enough to forgive. Darren had stopped remembering the date years ago. Lena never once asked, but Marge never forgot. Not the recipe, not the day, not herself. She poured the pale yellow batter into the pan with a calm finality, and slid it into the oven. The scent deepened almost immediately. Citrus and sugar and memory, as if her mother had walked in from the garden and sat down beside her, just for a moment. By the time the doorbell rang, the bars were cooling on a wire rack, dusted in powdered sugar like a fresh snowfall. Talia stood on the front step, duffel bag slung over her shoulder, curly hair tucked under a baseball cap from her campus library. Happy birthday, Gran, she said, stepping inside. God, it smells like childhood in here. Good. That's exactly what I wanted it to smell like. They brewed a pot of strong tea and carried their mugs into the sunroom. Talia curled up on the love seat, Marge in her usual chair, lemon bars between them on a pale blue plate. The first bite made Talia close her eyes. Still perfect, she mumbled, her mouth full. How do you even make it taste like this without like rage? Because I didn't bake it for them, Marge said with a quiet smirk. I baked it for me. They sat in silence for a while, the sunlight painting gold across the wood floor. Then Talia asked, do you remember the grocery store? Shuckled, low and wry. I remember the look on his face when I said paprika. I also remember how his hand felt. Talia's face darkened, but Marge waved her hand, lightness returning. It doesn't live here anymore. Talia nodded slowly. It never really did. You just made room for people who didn't deserve it. Marge leaned back and smiled. He told me to get lost, and I got everything instead. Talia reached behind a throw pillow and pulled out a small framed photo. The newspaper clipping had come in the mail 2 weeks earlier. She'd framed it herself. Local woman reclaims home from abusive son. I used my mind, not my mouth. Below the headline was a photo of Marge standing on her old porch, arms crossed, court documents in hand. You're famous, Talia teased. I'm a footnote in someone, Marge said, but I'll take it. Later that afternoon, a delivery driver arrived with a floral arrangement wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. The card inside read Becca at Carolina First. Justice tastes like citrus. Happy birthday, Miss Allen. The vase sat on the windowsill, lemon yellow daisies blooming in the sunlight like they knew they belonged. Just after sunset, as Marge folded a tea towel and placed it on the counter, the mail slot clinked. One letter slid through. Thick cardstock. Embossed seal. The return address read, Charleston Women's Legal Alliance. Marge peeled the envelope open. Inside, a formal invitation to be the keynote speaker at their Fall Empowerment Series. Topic: Elder Rights and Reclamation. When silence fights back. Her eyes paused on the final sentence. We believe your story is one of power, grace, and generational courage. We hope you'll share it. Marge waited behind the curtain, her hands calm, her breath steady. The soft murmur of the crowd filtered through the velvet barrier, low and anticipatory, like the hush before a storm. The Charleston Women's Legal Alliance had packed the event hall, rows of folding chairs, standing room in the back, and a few local journalists scribbling notes near the front. She didn't come for applause. She came because they asked her to speak. Because somewhere in the back of the room, someone's daughter was watching. Talia stepped up to the podium first, heels clicking with quiet confidence. She wore a navy dress and no jewelry except the gold locket Marge had given her for her 18th birthday. Her voice was soft but clear, carrying through the room with a strength that didn't need to shout. I'm here to introduce the woman who taught me what it means to own something, she began. Not just a home, though she reclaimed that too, but her peace, her dignity, her silence. Several heads turned. She showed me that boundaries don't just belong in conversations, they belong in deeds. Legal, binding, permanent. She taught me that you don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes you just have to outlast. She paused, smiled toward the wings. Please welcome my grandmother, Marjorie Allen. The applause came fast and full, echoing off the walls like thunder without anger. Marge stepped forward, her low-heeled shoes making no more noise than necessary. She nodded once toward the crowd and began. I never thought I'd be holding a microphone at 74, she said, a hint of mischief in her voice. Then again, I never thought I'd be holding a deed in my own name either. Laughter rippled through the audience, but Marge didn't smile yet. Sometimes power doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in documents you keep for decades, in phone calls you make without trembling, in the decision to walk away from someone who keeps taking and never says thank you. The crowd quieted again. People leaned forward. I gave a lot to someone who thought gratitude was optional and control was guaranteed. He hit me once, in public. Thought no one would say anything, and no one did. Marge let the silence sit. But I did something better than speak. I filed. I proved. I outlasted. And when he told me to get lost, I did. In his paperwork. This time the applause was slower but deeper, the kind that comes from people remembering their own long-ignored worth. I'm not a lawyer, she said, softer now, but I spent my life working for them, and I know this paper has a memory, and when no one listens to your voice, the paper will. People wiped at their eyes. A woman near the back stood, hands clasped in front of her. Marge saw Clarissa in the second row, nodding slowly. Will, arms crossed, smiling just enough to be proud. I didn't win because I was loud. Marge finished. I won because I was precise. She stepped back from the podium. The standing ovation that followed wasn't thunderous. It was reverent, a rise, not a roar. At home that night, Marge tucked the framed copy of her speech beside a worn folder inside her desk. She opened the bottom drawer and placed the original deed gently on top of her latest will, laminated, notarized, sealed. Every clause exactly where it should be. Tullia, the sole beneficiary. Darren, excluded with finality. Lena, not mentioned once. Above the drawer, framed in clean white wood, hung a quote in elegant script, "She got lost," and came back titled. Outside, the street lights flickered on. A breeze rustled the mailbox flag. The house sat still and unbothered. Marge turned off the lamp. Let the quiet fill the room. He slapped me at the grocery store. I slapped my name on the deed.